I revealed to my dad's wife the real reason why me and him were never close. My whole life people thought me and my dad just didn't get along, like we were too different or whatever. But the truth is way darker than that. And last month at my cousin's graduation party, I finally told his wife Rachel exactly why. Growing up, everyone always said we looked nothing alike. I had brown hair, he had blonde, I was short, he was tall. My mom would just laugh it off and say I got all her genes. But when I was 12, I overheard my aunt whispering to my uncle about how my mom was seeing someone else when I was born. I didn't really understand what that meant back then, but as I got older, things started making sense. Why my dad never really bonded with me. Why he'd light up when my little brother Jake was born, but barely acknowledged my report cards or soccer games. Why he'd take Jake fishing every weekend, but never asked if I wanted to come. When I turned 18, I saved up money for my part-time job at Target and got one of those DNA test kits. You know, the ones they advertise on TV. I was hoping it would prove everyone wrong, that I really was his daughter, and maybe we could finally fix our relationship. The results came back 3 weeks later. 0% chance he was my biological father. I confronted my mom about it. She broke down crying and admitted she'd had an affair with her coworker Derek when she was married to Dad. She begged me not to tell him because it would destroy the family. So, I kept quiet for 8 years. 8 whole years of pretending like everything was normal while my dad treated me like a stranger in my own house. Meanwhile, Rachel was always trying to play happy family. She'd invite me to dinners and ask why me and Dad weren't closer. She'd suggest we go on father-daughter trips or take up a hobby together. It was honestly painful watching her try so hard when I knew the truth. Last month at the graduation party, Rachel cornered me again. She was a little tipsy from the wine and started going on about how sad it made her that me and Dad had such a distant relationship. She said she'd been researching family therapy and thought maybe we could all do sessions together. That's when I snapped. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Rachel, we're not close because he's not actually my dad. He figured it out when I was little and has been treating me like a stranger ever since." Her face went completely white. She just stared at me for like 30 seconds without saying anything. Then she asked if I was sure. I told her about the DNA test and how Mom confirmed it. Rachel started crying right there in the middle of the party. She said she always wondered why he never talked about me the same way he talked about Jake. She thought maybe it was because I reminded him of Mom too much or something, but now it all made sense. The next day, Rachel called me. She said she confronted Dad about it and he admitted everything. Apparently, he'd suspected since I was born, but never wanted to know for sure. He said it was easier to just emotionally distance himself than deal with the truth. Rachel was furious. She told him that wasn't fair to me and that I was just a kid who didn't deserve to be punished for something my mom did. She made him call me to apologize. When he called, his voice was shaky. He said he was sorry for being such a terrible father and that none of it was my fault. He asked if we could maybe try to have some kind of relationship now that everything was out in the open. Honestly, I don't know if I want that. 26 years of feeling rejected by the man who was supposed to love me unconditionally has done some serious damage. Story 2. My parents gave my brother $100,000 for a house and gave me nothing but "you're the failure." So I stopped calling them. 2 years later, my brother drove past my property and called Dad screaming, "You need to see this with your own eyes." Chapter 1. The bottle I took back unopened. When Ryan closed on his new 2-story home in the suburbs, white siding, 2-car garage, granite countertops, Mom posted the photo with the caption, "Proud of our boy, first big step in life." There was no mention of the $100,000 they wired him to make it happen. Or that he hadn't worked a full-time job in nearly 4 years. That day, I brought over a bottle of wine to celebrate, one I couldn't really afford. Something French, dusty, the kind of thing you buy when you want to say, "I'm proud of you, too." But when I showed up, I wasn't even invited inside. "Keep your shoes on the mat, okay?" Ryan said from the doorway. Mom just had the carpet steamed. The living room was full. Uncles, cousins, family, friends from church. I hovered near the coat rack like a forgotten coat. Dad nodded at me once. Mom didn't even do that. When I handed over the bottle, she didn't take it. "Oh," she said, "you brought something. That's nice. You shouldn't waste your money, though." I left it on the counter. By the time cake was being served, I noticed it was gone. Not opened, not poured, just vanished. I found it later, shoved behind a stack of Amazon boxes near the recycling bin. They gave Ryan a house. I gave them a gift. I took it back with me, unopened. The breaking point. A week later, I stopped by their place just once because Dad asked. He wanted help fixing a sprinkler head. I came straight from my second job, still in uniform. I smelled like sweat and lawn fertilizer. While I was kneeling in the dirt, wrench in hand, Ryan pulled up in his new SUV, still wrapped in a big red ribbon from the dealership. "Nice ride," I said, wiping grease from my hands. "Yeah," he grinned. Dad figured I deserved something nice to go with the house. That was when I looked up at Dad, hoping for something, an explanation, a joke. Instead, he just said, "You should be happy for him." No hug, no card, not even eye contact. Just that line like I wasn't even their son anymore. Just a witness. Quiet goodbye. That night, I deleted the family group chat. Then I did something no one expected. I opened a spreadsheet, started sketching a life they'd never be a part of. Chapter 2. Raised by the same roof, treated like the tenant. I used to think favoritism was something kids outgrew, like the tooth fairy or monster under the bed stuff. Something silly you imagined when mom gave your brother the bigger slice of pie. But favoritism follows you into adulthood. It just gets quieter, colder, harder to explain. 2 brothers, 2 lives. Ryan and I were just 18 months apart. Same schools, same bedrooms growing up. But when it came to how we were treated, you'd think we came from different planets. He was the golden boy. Varsity sports, average grades, popular. Every failure was a learning moment. I was the quiet one. Built things, repaired my own car at 16, graduated community college with 0 debt. Every win met with "That's nice, but why don't you?" The call that snapped something. 6 months after I stopped talking to my parents, I got a voicemail from Dad. "No, how are you?" No mention of the silence, just "Your mother's birthday is next week. Don't embarrass yourself." I didn't call back. But I did sit on my porch that night with a beer and opened up the old wine bottle I'd brought to Ryan's house years ago. It had followed me through 2 apartments and now sat on a rickety shelf in my garage workshop. I didn't drink it. I just looked at it. Still sealed, still unopened, still unwanted, just like me. Turning distance into fire. Something changed that night. I stopped waiting for recognition and started building my own. Literally, I took on a 3rd job helping refurbish barnwood from old Midwestern properties. Nights and weekends, I crafted tables, headboards, shelves, real pieces. My name got passed around. A realtor friend connected me with someone offloading land cheap out near Larks, a remote area that didn't look like much, but to me it looked like freedom. I bought it. 35 acres, paid cash. Then, using my savings and side hustle income, I did what my parents thought I never could. I built a house by hand. No loans, no help, just lumber, sweat, and silence. Chapter 3. When Ryan drove past my driveway, I hadn't seen Ryan in almost 2 years. No texts, no family group chats, just the occasional secondhand gossip. Ryan and Kelly are remodeling. Ryan's kid made varsity. Ryan this, Ryan that. I had nothing to prove, but life has a funny way of staging the perfect reveal without needing your help. The wrong turn that changed everything. I was stacking cedar planks outside the house when I heard tires on gravel. Nobody ever came down my road unless they were lost, a contractor or a deer. But that truck, I knew the sound. It was Ryan's same Ford F-150 Dad had helped him finance. I turned my head just as it rolled to a stop halfway down the hill, right where the trees open up and give you a perfect view of the house I built with my own hands. The wraparound porch, the black metal roof, the workshop out back. Ryan just sat there in his truck for a full minute. No music, no door opening, just staring. I didn't wave. I didn't approach. I let the silence do what years of conversation couldn't. The call I didn't expect. Later that evening, Dad called me. His voice trembled, not with emotion, but with something far more unfamiliar from him. Disbelief. "Your brother just called me. He said, you built a house out in Larkspur." I let the pause stretch. "Yes," I said. Calm, flat. "You paid for it yourself?" "I did." "How?" He blurted. "You were working those part-time jobs." "I was building." I cut in. "While you were giving away your faith in me." There was a long silence. "Then your mom wants to come see it." I didn't answer. I just looked at the unopened wine bottle on the shelf again and smiled. Chapter 4. When they finally showed up, I wasn't expecting them. But then again, part of me always was. It was a gray Saturday morning when the gravel popped under the weight of 2 tires I knew too well. Dad's Camry, the one he always bragged, had more miles than your college degree ever will. I watched through the kitchen window as both doors opened slowly like a scene rehearsed 100 times. They stood side by side in silence. Mom in her usual cardigan, the one she wore the day she hugged Ryan for his new home. Dad with his hands in his pockets, surveying the land like he was still deciding if it was real. The house that shouldn't have been. They didn't knock, just wandered closer like visitors at a museum they didn't think they'd ever visit. "This is yours?" Dad asked, not quite making eye contact. I nodded. "All mine. Built it board by board. Got the final permits last year." Mom looked up at the cedar beams on the porch, the stained glass windows, the rain chains I'd custom welded. "You did this without a single loan," she whispered. I could hear it in her voice, a mix of shame, disbelief, and something else. Regret the room that broke them. I walked them through the place, not to brag, not to gloat, just to let them see. The hardwood floors I milled from reclaimed lumber. The fireplace I bricked myself stone by stone. But when we reached the study, the quiet back room with the old bookshelf I'd built in high school, the one they told me was cute but not a career, Dad stopped cold. He ran his fingers across the wood. "You kept this?" I didn't answer. And that's when I saw it. The first flicker of understanding in his eyes that maybe they'd been wrong. Not just once, but every time they dismissed what I built, who I was. The conversation we never had back on the porch, Mom finally broke the silence. "Why didn't you call us?" I stared at her, really stared. "When Ryan got the house," I said quietly, "you threw him a party. When I told you I bought my first acre, you said, 'Hope that doesn't bankrupt you.'" Mom's face crumbled. Dad looked away. "You chose who to believe in," I added. "I just stopped trying to convince you." And for once, they had nothing to say. Chapter 5. The bottle on the mantel. They left that day in silence, but 2 weeks later, my phone rang again. This time from an unknown number. It was Ryan. "Look," he started. "I was driving past your place again. I didn't know it was that." "That what?" "That house, that land, that life. You did it, man." He paused. I think Dad finally gets it. He hasn't stopped pacing. He keeps muttering stuff like, "He did it without us." Without a cent, the invitation. I didn't invite them back. Not out of spite, but because I didn't need to anymore. But something surprising happened that Thanksgiving. A car pulled into the driveway. It wasn't Dad's Camry. It was an old pickup, Ryan's. He stepped out, carrying a bottle of red wine. Same brand I'd given our parents 2 years ago, the one they never opened, the one I'd quietly taken back home with me. I hadn't touched it since. It sat on my mantel, unopened, dusty, a symbol of everything left unsaid. Ryan looked at it, then at me. "Still got it, huh?" "Yeah," I said. "Funny thing is, it aged better than I expected." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "You know, they were wrong about you. Always were. But it took seeing it for themselves to admit it." Poetic justice in plain sight. Later that night, I stood in the great room, fire crackling, holding that bottle. I thought about opening it, but instead, I picked up a small placard, something I'd engraved on wood, and kept hidden until that day. It read, "To the ones who believed, even when no one else did." Under it, I had carved only two names, my late grandfather and my own. I placed the plaque beside the wine because some victories don't need to be shouted. Some just need to be seen. Epilogue. The sound of gravel. That Christmas, I didn't go back to my parents' house. But I heard from neighbors that Dad drove past mine again slowly, quietly. Just once. No horn, no knock, just the sound of gravel under tires. And then he was gone. I didn't chase that moment. I didn't need to, because some part of him finally understood. Not just what he'd missed, but who he had underestimated. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to anyone. Not with money, not with degrees, not with a house on a hill, just by existing in the peace I built. Brick by brick, dream by dream, without their blessing. I lit a fire that night, sat alone on my porch, and opened the bottle of wine, the one they said I couldn't afford, the one they never wanted, and I drank to becoming everything they said I couldn't be without them. Was this revenge perfectly justified, or should the storm have raged harder? Drop your verdict below. I read every single one. If you are watching this video, comment below and tell us where you are watching this video from. Hit like if you crave justice and share this story with someone who needs its fire. Subscribe to Revenge Exposed, because here betrayals don't sleep. They hunt their owners. Every shadow hides a reckoning. Every mask breaks and every betrayal is answered. Stay sharp. Stay unbroken. Stay tuned.